This session brought to you by Odyssey Games for pre-orders and sealed product, CCG Prime for tons of singles and supplies, Cardo Doko for international rulers looking for products, and FOWLibrary.com for articles and wonderful deck lists.
As well as our guest lecturer members King Pearlshine, Vite Ramen, Mognite, and Darren Noblock.
Class is in session.
Hello everyone, welcome back to the Tournament Report with yours truly, Paul Reisman. Today we are taking a look at the different deck lists that topped here at Force of Will Festival 2023 in Kalamazoo, Michigan. We had about 70 players, and that was just a ton. I mean, this is GP level event, right, in terms of its occupancy. But at the end of the day, it was just a lot of people enjoying Force of Will. It was kind of like second Worlds if you weren't able to go to Worlds, which is something I find really, really great for folks who are stateside and don't get their invite, but they do want to play Force of Will and celebrate this game. This is definitely the most diverse ruler breakdown I've done in quite a while. Killua was the most represented deck at 9. 9 total decks. And none of them converted, so if Killua was the boogeyman going into this format, she was definitely not showing that in any way. But there were, again, about 13% of the decks were 13% of the decks were Killua, and then we went into about 7% of the decks in Branhart and Tina. Then we had Lenneth Tree, which was really well represented at about 5 copies as well. Falchion, Electra, Asuka, Branhart, Nick, Typhon, Order Alice, Ainz, Aristella with Partner 1, Vega, Lich, Deus Ex. I mean, there was just a ton of decks here. Notice that there was only one Lich deck that made it in. We also had Ragnarok represented at just 1 in the entire tournament. So here's what I gotta say: if you are entering, if you're playing your deck well, and you're the only one playing that deck, you know what? That does not mean you're going to just automatically lose, right? So this is your spread for Force of Will Festival 2023. This is just beautiful, and I love seeing this kind of diversity in the game. Let's take a look then at the Moonchild breakdown. This is a little, if you don't like Moonchildren, you may not enjoy this graft, unfortunately. So we had about 22 light Moonchildren in the entirety of the tournament. Wind Moonchild came out right behind. Wind Moonchild especially was really good because you were able to keep Branhart off his big burn spell, right? Because it was reducing cost and stuff. So Wind Moonchild was able to keep Branhart off of that if you had that. And then you had Darkness Moonchild, right? I mean, this is kind of the spread we expected with Moonchildren. Outside of the generic 5 that we got at the start of Hero Cluster, they've all just kind of been a little bit more specific to their decks, right? I think of X, the Black Cat, is specific to Hyde. Child of the Ethereal Moon is very specific to Reinhardt, things like that. And so the most flexible Moonchildren makes the most sense to me. We have a lot of light Moonchildren because they're just that good. It's saying you don't get to combo off anymore, you don't get to cast spells anymore. Really helpful in a Branhart meta game. So this is the Moonchildren. We're going to move on then to the top 8 breakdown. So, Flashin', right? Yeah, okay. I caught myself there. Going into the top 8, though, there was a lot of really interesting stuff going on here, right? So, Falchion has been a particular deck that has seen a lot of success over the course of its run here. It's been kind of like eternally just very good. Just kind of like a pile of control cards, right? With additions at the helm. Being able to just search them out with daily research has been just so incredibly powerful and consistent over time. So Falchion is certainly doing really well for himself. Ainz, though, really came out. There was only 3 copies in the overall tournament, but 2 of them converted. So Ainz had an amazing day. Not to mention Ragnarok, the single Ragnarok player, Steven Holsheiser, was able to convert into the top. And we also had a Lich just kind of come in, kind of unexpected, out of left field. The Rune Ruler, Lich, just, hello, here we are. Wowzer. And of course, we expected some sort of Branhart list to get into the top cut. You're probably only going to see one of those, if ever, right? But we definitely saw one of those convert. thanks to Todd Sprouse, of course, doing some really, honestly, degenerate things with red cards, and I love it. But yeah, I mean, this top 8 is like, there's a lot of stuff in here that was anticipated, right? Like, we anticipated Falchion to be really strong. We anticipated that Ainz might be there in some capacity with Great Dimension Library, but then Lich and Ragnarok come out of left field, and you're just like, what is going on here? So guys, I'm going to take a brief hiatus here and take a recess, and we are going to pan over to Force of Wind so we can take a look at the top 8 deck lists. All right, guys, welcome to Force of Wind, where we're going to be taking a look at Steven Hulshizer, winner of FOW Fest 2023. This deck was amazing to watch on stream, I have to say. The fact that he even won the whole thing is also just chef's kiss. So Ragnarok, obviously, is just always going to be a relevant ruler. It's never respected enough because people just forget he kind of exists. And he's kind of seen as a joke deck, right? Even Steven will admit that Ragnarok is his fun deck. But there's a lot of fun stuff going on in here. He's gotten some new tools. He's gotten Rumsfeld to turn off rulers that love their activate abilities and stuff. Most of the time, you are going to be gassing out your own stuff, your own activate abilities, your own will production, drawing cards, stuff like that, very early in the game. So Rumsfeld becomes relatively okay to play later in the game. He's also got the Mumu Tribe Researcher to produce an extra Void Will for just 1 discard. Very, very strong. He's obviously main decking Electra. He's really, his main strategy here is to abuse Water Servant and Wind Servant for will production and for drawing additional cards. The main way he's doing that, at least from what we could see on stream, was through Magna's Guardian Beast as well as Dexia's Advice. All very accessible cards that you can play with Ragnarok's will production ability. You can also get them off of Sacrificial Altar, which is another really nice tool. But what you essentially do is you get out your Wind Servant or your Water Servant, and then you use cards like Alice's Little Decoy to bounce them back to your hand and replay them. You can also loop Will with Wind Servant, so you can bring these out, and then with Alice's Little Decoy or even Bastet, God of Cats, you can bounce that back to your hand and replay it, and then just profit Will up the wazoo. You can produce a lot of Will in this deck very, very, very quickly. There's even an infinite here with Rezard's Ataraxi as leading doctor, being able to, once he's on the field, with Wind Servant, use Dark Alice to just loop all of this stuff back into your hand and just produce more will and do just really degenerate things. It's really fun to see that this is happening. He also has Roamer as a disruption tool if your opponent is going into Bran Heart for any particular reason. This card just says, okay, you're going to take a whole bunch of damage now. Hope you win this turn. That's kind of what Roamer says in general. He's playing Dark Alice, Manifestation of Rage, alongside the Witch of the Fallen Kingdom for a win condition, alongside Dexia's Advice. This is really just fun to see. It also just removes the graveyard, which is not bad at all. For just 2 black, come in, remove the graveyard is really, really good. Then she gets bigger, which is also really fun. The deck has just a lot of good combinations of stuff going on. He even has good cards like Girl Staring At that he can side in, he can main board. With all of the different God's Arts going around, he's also playing the 6th boon to shut that down and produce additional will for him to use with Ragnarok. Going into the Magic Stone deck, he's obviously playing 4 of Ragnarok's Stone. He's playing 3 Moonshade for will consistency alongside the 1 Knowledge Stone, and then he's playing a couple of 4C stones in Secret Stone of the Wanderer Moon and Chaos Moon. In the sideboard, he's playing the bow and arrows to work with Electra. She brings in this armament from the sideboard, so it's always just a little additional thing you can have, which is really fun. Obviously, Rogue Spectator. You see this Drywing, and I say, the way that you make Drywing revealed in the sideboard is just to play Magical Engineer of Mott. Which is definitely not something I've thought about with her being a 2-drop Water Resonator. Moving on. We are also playing a Horn to recycle the graveyard. We do also have Hellfire, the Mnemonic World, to just counter Rumsfeld decks. Flighter is there for value. Muse staring at the disrupt. Loki's Insight also to just get rid of additional cards. Decay of the Machines. I'm guessing this is trying to disrupt things that are revealed. Things like Drywing that can still come up every once in a while. If you need a way to get around that, Decay of the Machines is there. Dispelling Stone for destruction of additions. Evil Elemental Uprising to say no to Branheart decks that like things in their graveyard. And then, of course, 3 Witches and the Pumpkin Witch for the train at the end. This is your first place winner, and this is their deck breakdown. Ignore the void things. It counts the stones for some reason. I'm not entirely sure, but this is mostly a wind deck, as you would come to expect in Force of Wind. Lots of 1s and 2 drops, some 3 drops, a little bit more generically than you would see in other decks, but again, Ragnarok produces will, so that's not that really big of a deal. Congratulations to Steven for getting first place. Very fun deck to watch on stream, by the way, so make sure you go back into our YouTube archive and look at that. That was very fun to witness. Very, very, very cool. Jeremy Lindley got into second place with Falchion. So to just break Falchion down a little bit, he's moved away from just, being generically like just find all of these additions. He's kind of moved away from that a little bit so he can focus on Great Dimension Library value engine. So he searches out Great Dimension Library using daily research, and then he uses Brad and Conflict of Memory and Soul to keep your opponent off of stuff, but also just discarding 1 Brad every single turn to get an additional card is crazy. Plus, Great Dimension Library allows you to reuse Conflict of Memory and Soul from the RFG, which is really helpful. So this is just a neat little core that Falchion gets access to, and it's also like really kind of on point for Falchion being the researcher, of course. Where is he going to research better than in the Great Dimension Library, of course? Anyway. In addition to that, he's playing a couple of cards like Spirits of the Crimson Moon to stop other additions from ruining the day, as well as Regalia, which are definitely relevant right now. He's playing 2 Reflect and Refrain Guardian Twins of Cocoon, which also really complements your Conflict of Memory and Soul. Conflict can be just free, and this can be fodder for that, or if you're able to, say, win the war that you're trying to win with your Feath Sings, this is just really, really helpful for that as well. So Reflect and Refrain is just really interesting. And then it's a 9/9 statted body with Quick Cast and Flying. Very, very helpful card. He's playing 3 Prisia as well. This is also really helpful when you want to find your Tinkerbell. If you reveal reveal your Prisia's Big Show 3 different times, you're able to say, cool, now I get a Tinkerbell and I'm going to wipe your field on your turn. That seems pretty good, right? There's a value engine in that. You can fish out your Aphrodite for some life gain. You can find a witch to just end the game with your train in the end step, in the end game, excuse me. And then, of course, you have Never End as a way to just utilize your Moon Children and just provide a whole bunch of really good stats on a Flying Resonator that draws you a card when it comes into the field. Very, very, very solid. He also gets access to Girl Staring At, which is a good way of just blanking the field. Very good generic white card that we have now. So playing this in Falchion makes a lot of sense to me. He's playing a Diversity Magic Stone list here with 2 Moonshades, 2 Knowledge Stones, 2 Darkness Moon Fragment, and 1 Fire Moon Fragment. He's also playing 1 Magic Stone of Moonlight, which can just become an Omni Stone if you need it to be. I did not see players finding this off at the top like we used to back in the day of Grim Cluster, but it does exist and it is here. It's very useful, especially when you get something like Moonshade, where you just now have another Omni Stone. You're playing a lot of Moon Children rulers, so Amadeus Holy Crystal is also just another generic, here's an Omni Stone. So play your Singleton rulers. This card getting turned off can sometimes be relevant. In the side deck, we have Rogue Spectator alongside your 2 Witches and your Pumpkin Witch. We have Curse of Magog to say, cool, you don't get to play cards this turn. Unless you just want to give me a whole bunch of cards. That seems bad for you, though. We're playing 1 Longsword and 1 Chain Sickle to work with Electra. Playing Outer Space to be able to search it out, and then your opponent is going to be punished if they're playing anything Revolution Order. Really helpful against Order Alice as well. You have Child of the Darkness Moon in case your opponent is just playing some really degenerate, crazy stuff like Electra. You might get burned, but at least you kill the Electra and you're able to stave off just losing the game outright. 2 Loki's Insight to be able to get rid of your opponent's quick cast cards. Very relevant card here. We're also playing Wanderer's Castle. This card is going to come up in Falchion more and more, especially as we go into the top 4 here. Wanderer's Castle is just very, very, very solid. It comes in, it's a big replacement for Wall, but it doesn't give you an additional card, which control decks really do like at the start of the game. You're also seeing Witch of Quenched Fire as a way of saying no to aggro decks, which are mostly red at this point. And then Eternal, in case you are saying, I don't really necessarily need the additional card this turn, I just want to combo off and make sure that I have that extra will on turn 2. Plus, your additions gain Barrier, which is also really, really helpful. So congratulations to Jeremy for getting into top 2 against Ragnarok. That would have been a really fun match to witness, especially if I were behind Stream Deck, but that's okay. This is a very, very fun, very concise Falchion list. Misla Skarlatov is also on Falchion. A lot of the same things going on in this deck. He's actually opting to play Sword of Progression, which I think is a really good choice. Card is just very, very good, very cracked card in general. Just so much value, being able to reset your own Feath Sings, draw additional cards. Very, very good. He's playing 3 Prisia, of course, alongside things like Falchion and Tinkerbell, just for value there as well. He's also playing 1 of the Illusionary Flower of Sorrow. Beautiful card. Not a flower. Wish it were a flower, but it's not. But it does get to bounce something, and it can lock things down, so it's a really good anti-aggro tool in the main board. Magic Stones are diversity, again, pretty much exactly the same as we saw before with a few tweaks. Side deck is also relatively similar. He's only playing 1 Loki's Insight in order to fit in Lightning Cave, which is, can be relevant. Shuts down swiftness and flying, especially against Tina Branhart. It can be somewhat relevant if you're worried about tokens or other swiftness resonators or other flying resonators. Helpful. So it is something you can put in because you do have access to daily research still. So fun deck. Falchion is kind of solved at this point, but there are definitely some flex points that you can use, and Misla puts that out very clearly here in his build. So congratulations for Misla getting into the top 4 alongside Luisin Gaetan. Also playing very similar Falchion list, although he's opting to play more of a draw engine. He's also playing a 2nd Shooting Star of Water Falchion. He's also opting to play a Borozuki. Great card. If you have a lot of cards in the late game in your RFG or even in your graveyard, this card is just really solid. It really benefits from Great Dimension Library as well because you just have all of these cards removed. Everything was getting removed, and so this thing is going to be huge. It's got Flying Drain and Bane, very solid 1-drop card. He's also playing Change the World. Now, this is not something I came to expect, but it also just kind of makes sense, right? If you're playing the Wanderer Castle and you're getting that, turn 1 on game 1, you have 2 ways to produce magic counters now, and then you can just pay a green in your upkeep to draw an additional card. Really, really helpful, especially if you're not seeing Great Dimension Library. But if you do see it, then that's 2 extra cards a turn, which is kind of nutty. Instead of playing Electra, he opted to play Ray Asdabal in the main, which I think is a really interesting choice, especially since in the Falchion matchup, there's not a lot of cards that are going to come in and enter outside of things like your additions, right? It keeps folks off of Prisia. It prevents them from getting cards with Neverend. It's very, very interesting. And of course, I'm a huge fan of Ray Asdabal. I think ETBs are kind of crazy in this game, so him being able to come in and say you don't get those anymore is really strong. So this is definitely a choice instead of Electra. Very good card to have. He's also playing 1 Dark Sun to just make it so that your opponent doesn't have a barrier resonator anymore. It's also a quick answer to Electra. If your opponent is just playing Electra on their field, this is a really good way of getting around that as a searchable option with daily research. Playing 1 Horn to recycle the graveyard and a couple of Girion as well, just to round things out. Again, he's playing a relatively diverse stone list, but he's also ending up with a Ethereal Moon here. Secret Stone here is really useful for just getting additional black. You're seeing things like a Borozuki and Girion and Dark Sun, an additional Institute, so having a little bit of extra black can go a long way, especially if you have things like Ray Asnabal or even Never End you want to play as well. The blue can go a long way. Going into the sideboard, he actually sides his Electras, which I think is okay. You know when you need these cards, and if you over-rely on Electra, you can see your opponent wisen up to the fact that they have to pay attention to it. So bringing in Game 2 seems really strong, and you definitely do have the stone lineup to make use of it. He's opting to play 3 Witch of the Quenchfire in the sideboard. This man came saying, I hate aggro, it's never going to work against me, just stop trying. And that's exactly what happened. We also have 2 Muse Staring At. I think this is great. Muse Staring At, it's been like a premium sideboard card for all of the decks in the tournament that we've seen thus far. And of course, I mentioned the Wanderer's Castle, which has kind of come in to replace Wall. Congratulations to Luisen for getting into the top 4. Next up, we have Paul Martinson on Ainz. Ainz converted very well into the top 8. There was only 3 in the entire tournament, so just seeing Ainz being the value engine that he is really, really fun. We're also going to be seeing Logan Moses playing a very similar list. But for the most part, you're seeing him play cards like Solarization Facility. Gisification Facility is really, really helpful for turning things like your falchions into gears, which then get pumped up by all of your gearified animals in the sideboard. And then he can just bounce a whole bunch of really good stuff, give himself Eternal and Barrier by the discard of a card, which you then just replace with the Great Dimensional Library. So it all just kind of comes together. There was also some fun interactions that we saw with Reconnaissance Gears and Girl Staring At. If you have Reconnaissance Gears in your hand, you're able to just not only recycle stuff into your deck, but you're able to just play it for free. Girl Staring At says you don't have enters, and the cost reduction has already happened. So if your opponent GSTs you, you just get free 6/6s, which I think is really, really funny. We also have just good generic value in Persephone, being able to pop something to draw a card, or just put something back in the hand alongside Girion to be able to negate 1-drops. We're removing everything from the game, so Light of Raisin Revive seems really, really strong. Just get a 3 cost or less and slap it into the field. That's pretty much anything in the deck, outside of things like Girion or Electra. 3 Aborizuki, again, really strong with Great Dimensional Library, just gets really big into the late game, digs you deeper into the game. You're playing Tinkerbell in combination with Reconnaissance Gears. Reveal your Reconnaissance Gears, put it into the field, and then you have your Tinkerbell to blow up the field, because a 2-drop came into the field, very strong, of course. We're playing the Brad package alongside a couple of Flute for just that extra mana production, really helpful. A couple of Lorei, a couple of GST, and then Hyde, Shooting Star of Light. This card, I did not know where it was going to end up when we had it spoiled, and when I was pulling it, and I'm like, this is a really good, generic, strong card. Where do I use it? And Paul Martinson and Logan Moses said, we can just put it in Ainz. So for just 1 white, you can reveal this card from your hand and start putting counters on different entities you can control, including your stones. So when you come in, you take all of the seal counters from other things and you put them on to Hyde, which is really, really helpful. Rest all entities your opponent controls with seal counters on them, so it's a really good way of just saying, I'm just going to rest your board now. That's just the way it's going to be. And then you just move all of those seal counters onto Hyde. She has the ability to remove a seal counter to destroy target rested non-magic stone entity, which can be any of the stuff that your opponent just got rested, or you can target an activate ability and cancel it as well. She's just really interesting in the way that she works. She's a quick cast 7/7 for 2. She is a ninja, so she can work with her, her namesake ruler as well. But it's just a really interesting choice to be able to say, your field is now rested, and I get a whole bunch of really fun cards that I just get to use. And he's also playing just the 1 Electra, because of course Electra is like one of the main hallmark cards of this format. He's playing 4 Wanderer Moon stones alongside 3 Moonshades, an Amadeus Stone, Knowledge Stone, and then Wind Moon Fragment as well. In the sideboard, he has his typical Gears package. He's obviously not playing Squirrel, but then he's also playing Muse Staring At. and Evil Elemental Uprising to kind of round out everything. There are times in which you want to play Facility over Great Dimensional Library. I'm not a good enough Ainz player to know when you would want to do that, so they can tell me down in the comment section. How's that? And then of course the one Chain Sickle for when you do play your Electra and you're able to get that stuff revealed. This is his spread. Obviously a lot of Void cards, but also a lot of Wind and a lot of Light cards. So congratulations to Paul Martinson, fellow Paul in arms, getting into the top 8 with Ainz. We're going to talk about Logan's deck as well, because then we're able to just say Ainz has been taken care of. This is pretty much the exact same deck with a couple of changes. He's playing a couple of Reincarnation of the Soul. So this is a really good way of recycling cards that are in your RFG because of Dimensional Library and shuffling them back into the deck. This card saw almost, after Gil, this card saw almost no play, but it is a really good way of just recycling your RFG back into the deck, and then you just draw a card to replace it. It's really helpful for that reason. It's not quite Horn, but it is really helpful for getting certain cards back into rotation, including things like Sword of Progression, so just keep that in mind as well. His deck is pretty much exactly the same outside of that, so I'm not going to talk about it too much, and this is his spread as well. 1s and 2 drops up the wazoo. Logan, what an amazing match that we had on stream with him. If you guys get an opportunity to go back into the archive and watch that, Logan did just fantastic stuff in his match that he had on stream against Dalton, one of Ionia's finest. So congratulations for Logan for getting to the top 8 as well. Todd Sprouse was, I think, 3rd seed at the end of Swiss. And so going into this is kind of like the main deck that you had to watch out for, right? This deck can just burn through you like crazy. Obviously, we're playing Alice Zeus Incarnate because she counts for all races, which means she is a Blazing Skill in the graveyard. So if you need more Blazing Skills, here you go. Here's your Zeus Alice. The whole deck revolves around playing Flaming Thoughts to load up your graveyard and then just burning your opponent out with Burning Storm. That's really what the deck is supposed to do, and it does it very consistently and very powerfully, to the point where his side deck, there's not a lot of stuff in his side deck that he would want to side in. The game plan is burn your opponent. That's it. To help with Red Witch, he does play Gradius, which I think is absolutely necessary. You need 4 copies of this because you are milling cards to the graveyard, and so you do need to have access to multiple copies of this. Anything more than 2 in your hand you probably don't need, though. So you saw him discarding a lot of that stuff to the graveyard, I'm sure, as you were looking at the stream here with his match. Gradius, though, really good answer to Red Witch, and that's how he gets around it. Other than that, the deck is running Niklaus for Enchanting Sortie. Just going to mill 3 cards and add something to my hand. How's that? Also, you may not have activate abilities if I chain this. Just fair warning. This is also a good way of dealing with Wind Moonchild if they try and stop your Burning Storm with their Wind Moonchild God's Art. Just say, yeah, you don't get that. No, I don't think so, because technically it's been chained, so you don't get that anymore. That's pretty much why you run Niklaus. You also get access to blue for things like Ataractus Memoria, so you just have consistent will all the way through. We found another red deck, and it got into the top 8. Congratulations to Todd for getting into top 8. Very fun deck in general. If you like Burn, this is your deck. If you don't like Burn, well, you might get into the top 8, right? You might get into the top 8. Brendan Hill, what a fun deck to see in the top, right? We didn't expect Ragnarok in the top 8. Little did we also expect it to win. And then we found Lich. Lich is a deck. Turns out when you have just good darkness cards and a good ruler like Lich, you're never going to flip him, but he is there to give you divinity for all of these runes, like Demon Division to search out a card, Exploration for the Unknown to be able to find things like Persephone, things like your Zombie, things like your Girion. You definitely want Persephone and Girion and not Zombie. Just putting that out there. You definitely don't want Zombie, but if you do end up getting Zombie in hand and you have a bad whiff, you do have Roar, Doc Blessing to make your opponent just have no cards in their hand, which is cute. You're removing all that stuff from the graveyard, so you have Athena's Essence to shuffle that stuff back into the graveyard. And you also have part of True Power, which is really, really, really helpful when you have cards like Electra that you can just revive from the graveyard, or alternatively Girion. Both are really good targets. Getting those into the grave is what the purpose of Harvesting Season is. Obviously, you're running a rune deck, so you're probably running Harvesting Season. That's just the way it is. Power of Immortality is really helpful for reusing ETBs or just making sure something sticks around. ETBs like Zombie are really good. Lumia are also really good. Being able to say minus 12, -12 to your opponent's board seems really fun as well. Shadow Doppelganger. Being able to revive this and just anything in your graveyard, you just have more copies of Electra now. There's just a lot of really fun stuff you can use with Power of Immortality, and this card has just been a staple in rune decks for a long time because of that. And then obviously Tears of the Fallen. This is a main rune, so you have to have a Darkness Ruler to use it. Alternatively, he didn't necessarily need to run Lich in order to make this work. He could have also run Lucifer, but maybe Lich is just a favorite of his, so he decided to run Lich instead. All of that being said, this deck just takes a whole bunch of really good Darkness cards, puts them into a pile, and says, let's go. There's just a lot of value in Darkness, especially with cards like Zombie, being able to mill things into the graveyard off of Harvesting Season. Things like Inferno, which just say, you got me down really low in life. That was a mistake. Or even if you banish your entire hand with Roar of Dark Blessing, you then have access to Inferno to make sure your opponent still does not have a hand as you go into top deck mode. All that being said, this deck was really, really, really interesting. A lot of really powerful Darkness cards out there, guys. Putting those into a deck alongside green, and just saying, I now have a 5-card hand that you don't have, and by the way, I'm going to mill 10 cards. It's still a really viable strategy. It's really strong, and again, if you play the game well, you can capitalize off of playing really unconventional rulers like this one. Other than that, guys, this has been your top 8. Congratulations to all of them, and especially to Steven, who won the entire event. Guys, this was such a fun event. I cannot wait for the next one that's going to be coming up here. Gosh, if you weren't there, that was such an amazing event. So for all of you who did show up and talk to me and said hey to me, you're the reason I play this game, and I thank you for playing this game and coming to events like this so I can meet you and get to know you and become really good friends with you. Other than that, guys, this has been Paul. Hope you enjoyed the tournament report. Until next time, class dismissed.